That Republican atmosphere. More of that in this sideshow. Let's start with the role that race may be playing in the anger we're seeing on the right. Douglas Brinkley is, of course, a great presidential historian. His new book is The Wilderness Warrior, about Teddy Roosevelt. That's a big seller right now. And Melissa Harris Lacewell is a professor of politics and African American histories at Princeton. Well, it's great to have you both on, and this is Friday afternoon, but I'm going to cool it a bit myself and listen to both of you, because I do find it interesting. No, I mean it, Melissa. I want to listen, okay, because I do find a lot to be learning here. Here's what David Brooks wrote today in the New York Times. Obama's movement includes urban politicians, academics, Hollywood donors, and information age professionals. In his first few months, he has fused federal power with Wall Street, the auto industry, the healthcare industries, and the energy sector. Given all of this, it was guaranteed that he would spark a populist backlash, regardless of his skin color. And it was guaranteed that this backlash would be ill-mannered, conspiratorial, and over the top, since these movements are always that way, whether they were led by Huey Long, Father Coughlin, or anyone else. Well, we got to pay attention to David Brooks, and I want to know what you think of that, Melissa, that this isn't against the fact that he's African-American or that he has this African name, Barack Hussein Obama, but because he simply represents the sort of the new tide, the big city, the cultural, well, elite, if you will.
Well, I certainly think that David Brooks, as normal, has hit something very important here, and that is that African Americans are not the only group of people against whom there have been populist movements. And certainly, regardless of who was the president who introduced these kinds of changes, you were certainly going to see important and organized conservative backlash, especially around health care. I mean, there was highly effective backlash against health care reform against the Clintons, and the last time I checked, they're not only white, but Southern and white. That said, I think what Brooks misses in that argument is how frequently these kinds of populist movements have also been nativist, so that from our very earliest times as a country, the sort of effort against whether it's the French or the Irish or indigenous peoples or African Americans, they've often been framed as simply about values or about Americanness, but they've still had this kind of ethnic chauvinism or racism at their root.
So if his name was Joe Brown, a more common American name, than something that's African is Barack Obama, would he be getting this kind of nativist attack on him? You're not from here, the birther thing, all that stuff about him not being one of us, you know.
Well, I mean, that's the frame that is available because he's not only black, but he's also black and the child of an African student who was here in the United States who married a white woman. You know, all of those things that he used as part of his narrative to get elected can now be deployed against him. But at the same time, I certainly think that the key here is that if he were black and not bringing about significant social change, then I suspect, you know, the conservatives would not be particularly upset. In other words, if he were, say, Clarence Thomas, he wouldn't be getting these sorts of arguments. It is an intersection between his race and his progressivism.
Well, let's go with Douglas Brinkley on that question. Douglas, you know this whole history, you know, your historian role here comes into play here. If Hillary Clinton or John Kerry or Al Gore, one of the recent Democratic nominees or almost presidential candidates, had won the presidency and they were pushing the exact same program as Barack Obama right now, would they have people charging that they weren't born in the United States? Would they have people charging? Would there be people out there saying you lie? Would they be bringing guns to rallies?
No, I think the whole political climate's been charged. But take Hillary Clinton, for example. They went after her pretty hard back in 1993 for her health care, and the right kind of firebonded. That's when all the rumors about Bill Clinton started coming, and Vince Foster, and it got pretty dirty.
We all want an America defined by deep and meaningful equality, from civil rights to labor rights, from women's rights to gay rights, from ending discrimination. There are no acceptable limits, and there are no acceptable prejudices in the 21st century in our country.
We have a common task and a common challenge.
Why can't we see that we are all in this together?
18 million of you from men, young and old, Latino and Asian, African American and Caucasian, rich, poor and middle class, gay and straight, you have stood with me. And I will continue to stand strong with you every time, every place, and every way that I can. The dreams we share are worth fighting for.